Yeah, sure. So I spent most of the, I've been writing about this stuff, God help me, for 10 years now. And, since before the transformer models that made ChatGPT possible. And, there have been times when my reporting has taken me into worrying about the sort of existential risks that this kind of technology might pose. But the vast majority of my time and the vast majority of my concerns have been focused on near-term risks. And one of the big things that I worry about becoming extinct is our ability to make good decisions for ourselves. That basically, the thesis of my book, The Loop, the subhead of it is how AI is creating a world without choices and how to fight back. That world without choices is the thing that I'm worried about. It's this downward spiral that I really worry about when it comes to basically my thesis has been that AI is going to do to our decision, our ability to make good decisions, both as sort of institutions, as a society, as individuals, what Google Maps has done to our sense of direction. That a system that offers to take over the decision-making for us is totally irresistible to us because of the way our brains are made.
Yeah.
And it comes in the guise of a system that looks infallible, which really short circuits our ability to say, is this a good decision? Is this the right choice? And you combine that with all the profit incentives and the cost savings incentives that companies are falling so hard for right now. And it's really just a very dangerous cocktail is the way I end up looking at it.
Yeah. Let's go to the Google Maps example, because I think about this sometimes. This is when I was in news, we used to ride around in a van with milk crate of paper map books in it.
Totally, right? The Thomas Guide. You would use the Thomas Guide everywhere.
Map, I can tell you that in Baltimore, Maryland, Baltimore County is on page 31 and 32, and you'd sometimes get in the news van and find those pages missing.
Yeah, right.
If someone in a hurry was like, oh, we got to rip it.
And what they would, if they had fed you into an MRI at that time, they could have shown that region of your brain was very, very active, navigating and sorting your place in space. Right. And
totally.
And then because, and this is the thing I go into and over and over again in my reporting, our brains just don't want to have to do that work if they don't have to. We are just fundamentally lazy cognitively. It's not our fault. It's how we were built. And so if we can offload a task like that, we're absolutely going to. And the second that your brain can stop processing something like that and try and save its energy for something else, it's going to. We are energy conservation machines. And so, as soon as your brain said, oh, John doesn't need this anymore, then it just puts that away.
My brain has just now pulled like a detail of it. Do you remember you would get a coordinate? So you look in the back for the street and it'd be like H9, and you'd go on the map and you'd have letters and numbers. You'd be like H9 here. Okay, what is it?
Yes, I remember my first experience with that was the one I was thinking about was driving around with a girlfriend here in the East Bay, in the Bay Area in California, looking for apartments, and the 2 or 3 days it would take to drive to all these different apartments. Your brain would click together the neighborhoods of the town you're in, right? And now, I don't know where I am half the time, in my own town, in my own city. I follow this thing, and the thing, I use it as an example a lot of in explaining to people how their brain, why it is, the degree to which our brain really doesn't want to think about things consciously. There's this whole concept that they call the dual process theory of the brain that is made most popular by a guy named Daniel Kahneman, who wrote a book called Thinking Fast and Slow. And so fast thinking brain versus slow thinking brain. And your fast thinking brain is your ancient instinctive decision-making system that is millions of years old. We have it in common with primates. It's a system that's been in charge for a long time. And then our new system, the system that gets us dressed in the morning and is cautious and creative and rational and wonders what's on the other side of the horizon and all that stuff, that's a very new glitchy system. It's only like 100,000 years old. And so the contrast between those two systems is perfectly illustrated by driving. So if I'm sure you've done this a million times like I have, right? I'm supposed to, for instance, drop my kid off at school in the morning, but one morning, the schedule will change and I got to take him to the dentist. And I will inevitably accidentally drive them to school first, totally. Right? Of course, you have. And you get to the school and if you think about that moment, like you have just guided this half-ton vehicle through a maze of death, right? And you have no conscious memory of doing it. You don't know anything about how you got there. You just come to in the parking lot
autopilot.
And go,
yep.
oh, where am I? Autopilot, right? But that's your fast thinking brain. That's the instinctive system that is in charge most of the time, is what all the research shows us. But it's your slow thinking brain that then has to go, oh, right, the dentist, and drive you there. And if you've ever had the experience, I recently had the experience of having to drive a car in England, right? There's no such thing as going on autopilot when you're driving on the other side of the road. Suddenly, every single turn of the wheel is an incredibly intense intellectual experience.
Wow.
And that's your slow thinking brain working.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so my worry is that what AI is going to do is empower that ancient instinctive system so that we're on autopilot all the time, because our brain loves to be on autopilot. It doesn't want to drive in England. It wants to drive in the United States. And so that for me is the big existential risk, because I think it poses an enormous risk to our ability to be the best versions of ourselves.
And what about this sort of I've seen a photograph of, I think it's in the 70s, maybe the late 60s, something like that, where it's like literally fourth grade teachers walking around with signs in front of the school talking bad about calculators. They're like, don't say no to calculators, da-da-da-da-da-da. So, I don't believe this, but there's a theory that if you stop thinking about this thing, you'll just go on to think about this thing. And so if you unplug this, there'll be something cool and cooler to plug in, and it'll be fine.
Yeah, I mean that I understand that logic, and it's the rhetoric that the big companies use to reassure us about the incredible job disruption we're about to see. They'll say, well, we're all going to find other kinds of jobs. And in the past, everybody was a switchboard operator, and then they moved on to other kinds of work. But I would also, I would point out, like, we have not seen, I think there is a sweet spot in the development of these technologies where it can empower really positive attributes in human beings, right? A calculator can free us up to have bigger, fancier, that it would be, that you could do fancier math because of that stuff.
We can go make AI because we have calculators, right? If we don't have calculators.
That's exactly right. No, it makes it possible, right? But the calculator wasn't offering to do it all for you, right? And it wasn't offering to tie it all up in a bow and write the thesis paper in the end for the math majors, right?
Yeah.
And in this case, we're talking about such an all-in-one technology that it just sort of blows all of that away. And the real problem also is that the calculator, isn't like a calculator is truly just processing the raw data it gets in the most ground truth way possible. Whereas what these AI systems are all doing is vacuuming up all of our weirdness, all of our biases, all of our, historical mistakes, and regurgitating it all as if it's a ground truth, as if it's an honest, neutral truth. And so if you had a calculator that was, giving you the wrong answer some of the time and faking you into thinking it was the right answer every time, that's closer to what I think we've got now. And so there is, as all of the behavioral, as all the like evolutionary psychologists would tell you, like, it's good that we don't have to process everything raw. Like, it's good that we can outsource a lot of our decision making. We would be paralyzed, and frankly, we wouldn't really be around today if we didn't have this amazing instinctive ability to make decisions. That's a great thing. But there's a reason that you don't want to make all of your decisions in that instinctive way. And that is the crossroads that we're at right now.
I find people oftentimes try to find historical references for AI, and they all bug the hell out of me.
Yeah, the printing press, the television.
Television, right.